Hi and welcome to this tutorial. I wanted to create a model of the fidget toy that seems to be going around at the moment with this spiral cone, and I had a look online. I couldn't find anything for how to do it in Sketchup, so I thought I'd put this together. Few things before we get started to make this easier for you. A couple of recommendations for plugins. First of all, I'm using Pro, but any plugin that will allow you to do the subtract function for when you create components, and the main critical one is of course Freddo Scale. So Freddo Scale box twist allows you to twist the shapes much more effectively. A couple of others would be Solid Inspector, which is pretty standard to make sure that we have solid objects, and of course Cleanup as well, Cleanup 3. Which I tend to use quite a lot. Okay, so let's start. So first of all, we'll create a circle pressing the C key. And I use 72 sides by default because I'll be 3D printing this later on. I'm going to make this and model this slightly larger and scale it back down later on. So we'll start with a radius of 250. So we create our circle. What we need to do now is create the petal shape that will be the core of this, and then we rotate that petal shape through the model. So first of all, we start by drawing a line by pressing the L key. Here we go, straight up line. And I tend to do this by eye. So we're going to create a circle here, nearly to the outside edge, but not quite. And then, because we're making 6 petals, I'm going to rotate this by pressing the R key. The Q key, and pressing Control to make a copy of this. Now, normally it would be 60 degrees, so we want half of that in this instance, which is 30. And what I'm going to do here is create another circle, roughly just slightly more than halfway here. And then finally, we're going to use the A key to make an arc to come off this shape and into this shape here. Very rough by eye. Now we're going to delete the geometry we don't need, which is all of these items, leaving us with just the main shape here. Not forgetting that little one at the top. Okay, so we now have the first half of the petal. I'm going to copy this and paste it over to here, and I'm going to do a scale of -1 to get this to be the mirror image. We'll now press the M key to move this and join these two together. Okay, so that's our first petal. If we select all of those and then again press the Q key to rotate and again Control to copy, and now we want to rotate this 60 degrees. So 60, hit the Enter key. Now times, which is the X key, 5. We'll now create our shape. Just check that that is actually bound and welded, which it is, so that's good. So we now have our outer and our inner. We're going to take this by pressing the M key, and we're going to move this by pressing Control to copy it, and I'm going to move this 1000 just off to the side. Now the next thing to say is we need clearances when we print these in the 2 separate bits. We need to allow for a bit of clearance so that they slide through each other easily, and it's kind of the negative we're creating here. So we're going to use the F key to make an offset of this shape here. So we're going to offset this by 5 in my instance. Here we go. And what this allows us to do now is we will just delete this and this, so I can select all of that. Now we've made this one slightly smaller on the inside. We'll put this, and there's quicker ways of doing this, but in this instance we'll just create this face back again here, and we'll delete that and delete the inner section. So there we have it. We have the inner and the outer with some overlap, which again will be a negative. So we'll move this over here 1000. In fact, let's just move the entire thing without copying it 1000 over to this side. Now we need to create the shape. In fact, what we can do before we do that, we'll pull this up by 500 and this object up by 500 by pressing the P key, clicking, and 500. Now we're going to create the shape that we're going to use as the negative here. So again, we draw a circle with the same radius, 250. but this time we're going to draw a line straight up 500, and then we're going to make it slightly domed at the top, as you'll have seen, for those of you who've seen the actual fidget toy. And then we're just going to create somewhere around about here, down to this point here, to create this shape. Now we're going to use the follow me tool, which is this one here, and we're just going to turn this into the cone. Now sometimes this happens, and because of the size I'm printing at, I'm not too worried about that geometry. And of course not forgetting to refill the bottom in as well to make this a solid. We could now use the solid inspector tool or look at your instances to see if these are solids. I'm fairly confident we're good. Now what we're going to do is move this object into those two spaces. Well, first of all we need to make everything groups, so we'll group each object by double clicking to select all, press the G key to group and create the groups. Now we can move the first group, and we're going to copy this 1000 even, and we'll move it this way as well, 1000. So we now have the two objects. Let's focus on this one first. Using the subtract key, or your preferred plugin to do this, we'll subtract the first from the second, creating the first shape. And you see it's not twisted yet, we'll come back to that step later. We'll go over and do this one as well. Selecting the outer, subtracting the inner to create those two shapes. Now this is a good chance now to move this over 2000 to check that we have the clearances that we need, and it looks like we have. So we can just check we have those clearances, and we look like we've got enough clearance there, which is good. Okay, now we can select both of these, and we're going to use the Fredo scale tool. For those of you who've not used it before, so it's a very useful tool for twisting objects. So we select the objects we want to twist, and it creates these boxes, and you'll see here the orange lines are the amount of steps within the twist we want. If you right click, you can go to slicing parameters and select the number of slices. In my instance I want 24, this through trial and error. You can obviously undo, redo these and see what works for you. 24 for the size of model I have here seems to work for me very well. And I'm going to keep all of these options the same as default. So we click OK here. I'm now going to hover over the top here, and I'm going to click left click, and I'm going to just come off to the side here, left click again, and then I'm going to type in the angle that I want to twist it, and in this case it's 180 degrees. So type in 180, hit the enter key. It's now going to go off and calculate that, and there's a lot of calculations it has to do there, so it may take a few seconds to perform that. Whilst it's doing that, I highly recommend Fredo's plugins. I pay for them all that he has, how it's done it already. So I highly recommend getting those. Rounded Corners is an extremely useful plugin as well, so please consider purchasing those. So there we have it. It's now done it. I want to check that these two objects that we've now twisted together actually have the clearance all the way through. So we can use the section and we can just plonk that over, and let's move that up and down to see if we indeed have this. So let's select it and move it, and let's see. So we can see now here, it looks like this spiral is good all the way through. Yeah, that is wonderful. So that is it. Now obviously you can delete this and take this off to your 3D printer, set it up, export it. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so open up your slicer of choice. I'm using Prusa Slice, and what you can now do is import your model that you've made. Now obviously when I originally started this, I said I was drawing this much larger, and I'll scale it down by a factor of 10. So if I change this to 10% in the scaling, we get the required model. And then we'll slice it. I'm using 20% infill, pretty standard, and support everywhere, which isn't really required because there is no support required in this, so it's just on by default. So as we can see here, the slice looks good. Okay, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing. I'll hopefully be adding some more tutorials. I'm going to be playing around with these shapes a bit more and seeing what crazy shapes we can come up with. Because based on the tutorial there, you can now use any central shape to create odd shapes. They don't necessarily have to be the same. So let's see what fun we can have with this. Thank you very much again for watching, and see you later.